It's time for business now, and 80% of jobs created in Kenya since 2015 have been lost. Federation of Kenya Employers further say that at least 1 million employees risk losing their jobs in the 6 months as COVID-19 pandemic stretches on. Faisal Ahmed has the details.
The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic are expected to continue ravaging the employment sector, with Employers Federation warning of more job losses in the coming months. FKE Director Jacqueline Mogo stated in a survey conducted that 51% of companies do not have the ability to retain their current workforce.
But going by the current patterns on job losses and the numbers that have been lost, up to 1 million jobs, we said, are at risk of being lost, jobs and incomes. That is predicated on the figures that we have seen. The Federation is not predicting that 1 million Kenyans will lose their jobs, but you're saying going by the pattern of job losses in the last 5 months, which has really wiped out the jobs that we created in the formal economy, then the risk is that as many as those jobs would be lost, which would wipe out the year 2020, of course, in terms of any job creation.
From the survey, the average number of employees has reduced from 406 to 372. Further, 71% of the respondents from the survey indicate that the labor costs and employment benefits make it harder for them to recruit more employees. Only 30% of companies in the survey indicate that they can meet their employee wages. To avoid worsening the situation, FKA on its part is calling for the removal of the 1% revenue tax that is expected to start from next year, and a need for the government to set up a wage support fund to aid companies in employee retention.
Now, that's a tax, as we understand it, that says if you realize a revenue of 100 million, then you'll pay 1% tax on it. You need to look at the bottom line. Has this enterprise made profit? Because revenue is just revenue. What are your costs of realizing that revenue? So that needs to be reviewed.
FKE are calling for further reduction in labor costs, comparing Kenya to other EAC member states, indicating that Kenya's wage regime makes it harder for industries to compete in the region. So far, 173,743 formal jobs have been lost over the last 5 months, compared to 218 jobs created in the last 5 years. Faisal Ahmed, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The size of Nairobi National Park has increased after addition of 49,000 more acres donated to the Kenya Wildlife Service. The International Livestock Research Institution and Swara Plains Conservancy declared 32,000 acres and 15,000 acres of land respectively for wildlife conservation in Machakos County. The national government also added 2,000 acres of land from sheep and goat ranch to the park. The move effectively brings the total acreage of the national park to 78,000 acres. Different groups, among them activists, have mounted campaigns of late to protect Nairobi National Park. Tourism Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala acknowledged that the park is not big enough to meet its ecological requirements of its wildlife populations throughout the year. The suspension of Kenya Airways shares from trading on the Nairobi Securities Exchange (NSE) has been extended for a further 6 months, effective October the 4th. The extension, approved by the Capital Markets Authority, comes as the management of KQ finalizes on its operational and corporate restructure for an eventual government buyout. KQ's nationalization awaits the adoption of the National Management Aviation Bill 2020, which is currently under a second wave of public participation. The shares of Kenya Airways were first suspended from trading on the 3rd of July following the publication of the bill. Once renationalized, Kenya Airways is set to merge its operations with those of the Kenya Airports Authority under the wings of a new Aviation Corporation board. Yara East Africa has completed its fertilizer distribution campaign in the country. The organization dispatched the final batch of 34,000 bags of 50-kilogram cereal fertilizer to smallholder farmers in Tharaka Nithi, Embu and Meru counties. The fertilizer donation, worth 102 million shillings, will benefit 7,500 farmers. The donation brings to a close a 2-month-long initiative dubbed Action Africa Thriving Farms, Thriving Lives, which has seen smallholder farmers in 22 counties across the country benefit from a total of 13,000 metric tons of NPK fertilizer to be used before the next planting season.
The private sector and the government is the way to go in Kenya, because basically government do not do any farming, they only facilitate. And therefore, when we get partners who help us to facilitate farmers to have higher production, we can only support each other so that it can be a win-win situation, not just for our farmers, but also Kenya as a whole.
Many of the counties in Kenya, many areas are suffering from increased soil acidification, which in itself is undermining productivity. It's important that farmers start to transition from the traditional fertilizers that are acidifying our soils and invest whatever resources they have in products that are going to improve their productivity and not harm the soils.
It's going to be Obiri's win.